These students are from Sri Lanka's Moratuwa University.
After I graduate, I'm thinking of doing some more like academic studies. But apart from that, we can go and work in an office with an experienced architect.
I'm interested in doing some hardware with advanced software engineering.
After passing out from the faculty, I would like to do something related to business analysis and software engineering.
Moratuwa is a state-funded university that is catering to the changing needs of the economy. A 2005 survey found that only 3% of Moratuwa University engineering graduates were unemployed 3 months after the final examination.
And when we repeated the same survey in 2008, the unemployment was at that time only 1%. And we found that 77% of the people were employed in the private sector. So that demonstrates that our engineers are actually even better suited for the private sector.
The Moratuwa University belongs to a successful core of state-funded universities that are closely linked to the real economy and industry. Courses at its architecture facility, for example, are reviewed by industry experts.
They are practicing architects, they are practicing planners, they are practicing quantity surveyors. They come for the examination. And they also come for the lectures also. We are not working on Monday, we are working on Saturdays. Saturdays meant for bringing the industrial people to teach our students.
There are examples of high-performing higher education institutions. As an example, there is Moratuwa University, where the undergraduates are offered jobs even before they graduate, while they are in their final year. Then you have several of the medical faculties which are of high quality. And then there are other examples like the Postgraduate Institute of Management, the Postgraduate Institute of Agriculture at Peradeniya University.
Many has our past year students has joined as project managers, and the most important thing, even you can have your own company. Because some our fellow batchmates, and they are working their own.
Unfortunately, a troubling proportion of some 17,000 university students passing out each year do not think like Nadisha. These students are fasting to pressure the government for jobs. Graduates agitate for state jobs because they lack the skills or attitude to join the private sector. Sri Lanka's Higher Education Minister Vishwa Varnapala says ad hoc expansions to increase access, a heavy bias towards the art stream, and resistance to curriculum change has made a part of the graduate output irrelevant to the needs of the country.
All these ills, including those factors associated with violence and closures of the universities, have created a situation where the graduate finds it difficult to find a job in the private sector, as they do not fit into the jobs in this sector. Therefore, the burden is on the state. It's a massive burden on the state.
The World Bank says the time is now ripe to change the course of higher education.
I think that Sri Lanka faces the historic opportunity to become from low-income country to middle-income country, then from country in conflict to country in lasting peace.
The Towers of Learning, a new study on Sri Lanka's higher education system by the World Bank, has found that a significant proportion of the student population have access to various forms of higher education. A large proportion read for external degrees, choosing less challenging, soft subjects with no academic support from the universities.
All they do is they appear for the final exam. They may get private tuition on their own in tuition classes, but that's not comparable to a university experience. The single biggest problem facing the higher education sector is the philosophy which has looked at expanding access to higher education as the main policy need of the country. Now, that is yesterday's problem or last year's problem. That is not the main need of the country at the moment. The main need of the country now is to have on a widespread scale graduates who are employable in the global labor market, as well as graduates whose degree content is of international quality.
Universities situated away from major cities are also finding it difficult to attract high-quality academics because of the remoteness of their location. The World Bank report says the alternative higher education sector of the government, the Sri Lanka Institutes for Advanced Technological Education, also has a highly centralized structure. Decentralization and management empowerment is needed so that they can flourish and develop. At universities, the quality of courses need improvement.
If you look at those particular institutions, the high quality ones, they look at the standards in international higher education institutions, and then they ensure that their standards are comparable both in terms of curricula as well as in terms of the technology that they use.
Most graduates would also do better with a stronger grounding in English and information technology.
They must all be IT fluent, at least in terms of general IT skills. Secondly, we need to ensure that our universities have English language courses which are relevant for the labor market at different levels of certification. Also, we need to ensure that our graduates have work attitudes, habits of industry, of hard work, of long hours, which is required in the private sector.
In a world where knowledge is increasingly the most valuable tool for progress, Sri Lanka faces a major challenge. The country lags behind its comparator middle-income countries as it strives to build a knowledge-based economy. Sri Lanka ranks 82nd in a knowledge economy index of 120 countries. This spiderweb patterned graph tracks key requirements to becoming a knowledge economy. High-performing countries have high scores, with curves located away from the center. They are more open, allowing a stronger interaction with the rest of the world. They use information technology extensively and are ahead in research and development.
I can tell you 4 areas you have to work on to become knowledge economy, where you are lagging compared with other countries like Malaysia or Singapore, who are considered to be a knowledge economy. The first area you need to work on is how much the economy is integrated into the global economy, and we measure it by level of tariff and non-tariff barriers in terms of trade. The second area where you are lagging is actually the hardware of IT in terms of internet users and in terms of number of computers.
Due to weak research and development, Sri Lanka registers very few patents and has lost an opportunity to earn royalties.
The final area I think it's important for you to improve is the quality side of the higher education. And according to this map, how much international patent you are earning, and how many times Sri Lankan scientists are quoted in the international quality journal.
Frustrated by the present higher education system, many parents are sending their children abroad. Overseas accredited cross-border higher education institutions also in operation. There is a need for quality assurance and national level accreditation of private higher education institutions.
Typically what we see around the world is that there is an effort to stimulate the private higher education sector along with the public sector. So the two need to develop parallel, side by side, and there is reliance on the private higher education sector in countries around the world, including the former communist countries, Russia, China, Hungary, Poland, the Czech Republic, the Slovak Republic, the former republics of Yugoslavia, as well as in many Asian countries, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia. All of these have vibrant private higher education sectors. In Sri Lanka, there is a reluctance to encourage private higher education given our anti-market history. but this is something that is holding the country back.
Russia's first private higher education institute commenced in 1992. By 2005, there were 413 private institutions, compared with 655 state ones. The first private institute appeared in China in 1978. By 2000, more than 1,200 private institutes had appeared. In 2003, China brought in a law to promote and regulate private degree awarding institutes. Today, private institutes account for 10% of higher education enrollment in China. The World Bank study also points out that public expenditure on education in South Asia as a share of national income or the government budget is smaller than in other world regions, and that Sri Lanka spends less than the South Asia average.
Sri Lanka has been investing less in education than the average for developing countries, or the average for middle income countries, or the average for low income countries. And that underinvestment in education is also reflected in terms of underinvestment in higher education.
India spends 10.7% of its government budget on education as a whole. Malaysia spends 28% and Thailand 27.5%. Sri Lanka only spends 8.3% of the budget on education. As a proportion of GDP, public spending on education in Sri Lanka is 2.8% against 3.7% for India. A key recommendation of the World Bank study is to work towards making Sri Lankan universities improve their research capability and contribute to the economic and social development of the country. Sri Lanka's Higher Education Minister says even this goal is within reach if the needed changes are agreed and implemented.
Since the development of a knowledge economy remains an important goal of all the developing countries, the establishment of educational institutions of global excellence should be the priority of the countries in our region. We need to establish 1 or 2 global centers of excellence.
The World Bank says it is ready to help.
Because higher education is such a critical sector to become a middle-income country, to become a knowledge economy, we have been providing a full range of service. We have now 2 projects, one the general education, then the one higher education project. So in terms of lending, we have been continuously having project for Sri Lanka. Then we have just launched this higher education report. It's important for everybody in this country to participate in this policy debate, where the higher education should go and how this sector can and should contribute to the future of the Sri Lanka. We would like to actually encourage the public policy debate of the higher education in Sri Lanka.